everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar, Customer-Centric Marketing in Unprecedented Times. I'm Kaushik Satish from the Southeast Asia marketing team at MoEngage. First off, we hope you, your family, and friends are all staying safe. These are incredible times for everyone, and we absolutely appreciate you making time to join us. As our topic today makes clear, whether you're a marketer driving brand awareness or boosting sales, or driving retention, we're all having to relook at our plans and our strategies. And that's something that we want to start by acknowledging. The central question, though, is how do we do this in a way that continues to deliver the most value to our consumers? How can we be empathetic of what our users are going through and build deeper and more meaningful relationships with them? Which is why I'm thrilled that we have put together this very special webinar for you. We have data and insights from across Southeast Asia. We hope what we share with you over the next 40 to 45 minutes will truly help you navigate this uncertainty in some way. Joining us are two experts with deep experience in the region. Kshitij Hastu, who will start the webinar, is Senior Director of Growth at MoEngage for Southeast Asia and Australia. And Michael Paxman is the Global Product Communications Manager at Adjust. I also do want to call out that we will be taking questions at the end. So if you have anything you want to ask, if there are any ideas, any suggestions, please do send them in through the Q&A or through the chat window. We will be looking at that and we will be taking those questions at the end. Kshitij, this is over to you now.
All right, thank you, Kaushik. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks a lot for joining us today. We know you've got a lot of choices when it comes to webinars right now, so thank you for picking this one. Right, so before I begin, let me maybe just start off by telling you a little bit about who's MoEngage. I mean, why are we here talking about customer engagement to you? So we're essentially an intelligent customer engagement and analytics platform that helps brands globally track their users across app, web, or even offline sources, analyze this data to identify trends and opportunities, which allows for advanced segmentation based on this data, and further cross-channel engagement automation across channels like push, email, SMS, ad network, WhatsApp, whatever have you. Right, and this is something that we do for brands like Nestle, Tokopedia, Oyo Rooms, T-Mobile, and Samsung globally. So that's where our experience comes from. Now, jumping to why we're all here today, and that's to look at what do engagement metrics look like at a time like this. So we've actually gone ahead and compiled a few data points from our customers, especially in the Southeast Asia and Australian markets, to tell you a little bit about what we've been seeing. So starting off with what is probably the worst affected industry today, and that's travel and hospitality. Now here we actually started seeing a drop in DAU and MAU numbers as early as the 16th of Feb, and conversion rates subsequently seeing a sharp drop in the coming weeks as well. Especially when we look at the first week of March, there's a steep drop in numbers, primarily owing to the travel restrictions that started coming into the picture around then. So this is an industry that's been seeing a slowdown for a few months now. And yeah, first week of March meant a complete free fall almost. And even when we look at the new user data and acquisition data, we're seeing very similar numbers for travel as an industry. Now, moving on to BFSI and finance, that's something that sees a similar trend, right? We're seeing apps here as well, looking at a decrease in active users right from Jan up until March. Although in March, we have started seeing a slight recovery. That said, the conversion rates in this industry have been gradually dropping without much of a recovery. And this could have a lot to do with the general drop in economic activity right now. On the bright side, though, we are seeing a significant decline in the uninstall rates for BFSI apps in Southeast Asia. Now, moving on to mobility, which is probably the second biggest hit industry, and taking prime examples of Grab and Gojek. These guys have been two of the fastest growing and the most stable apps in the region, but they too are not growing anymore. Rather, they're also seeing a significant decline here. And a lot of this has to do with more people preferring private transportation modes over public because of social distancing and just generally not wanting to be around too many people right now. And also government issues, lockdowns, work from homes, with all of us sitting on our computers in our rooms. That's meant a decline for these guys as well. Now, another industry metric that we were able to take up is actually from China and focusing on the real estate and rentals industry. Again, one of the more stable industries historically. And China, which has actually been seeing a bit of a correction over the last 30 days. But here too, we're seeing a significant drop in daily active user numbers. And this has a lot to do with consumer confidence and investment appetite around these times, which have taken a big, big hit, right? And why is this? Why are we seeing some of these industries that were regarded as stable until not very long ago taking a big hit? And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the future is uncertain, economic future, especially with a global recession looming, and some economists even going as far as to say there might be a depression looming. And what that's meant is there's a shift in expenditures. So luxury spends are being curtailed, more focus on functional spends like healthcare, essentials, safety, etc. Now, what that has also meant on the flip side is the social distancing is meant we're spending more time online, interacting with friends and brands alike. We're interacting more and more with healthcare apps because we're more concerned about safety. And we're taking very well to CSR activities from brands. So brands that have actually moved their communication towards talking about CSR and how they're helping the community have actually seen a very positive response during these times. So how do you adjust to the new customer preferences because users are changing? And a few of the things that you could do here, firstly, is prioritize customer interest over your own. So be more customer centric, create experiences that leave a long lasting positivity in the user's mind. It's all about the long term here, short term, no more. And also find ways to take a bit of a short term hit if you can to make sure there's a long term value being delivered to your customers. So be more customer centric and think long term instead of short term. And a very, very good example of this is Amazon, right? Being empathetic and rather being customer centric is something that they've been doing for a very, very long time. And how you do that is by trying to be more useful as a brand to what the community needs today, being more helpful to what the users are expecting and looking for out of these brands today, and also delivering more to their essentials rather than their wants or the luxury requirements or wants that they might have. Now, what does that mean for retention at a time like this? Right. So retention's always been cost effective when it was compared to acquiring users. So acquiring a new customer has always been about 5 to 25 times more expensive than retaining an existing one. But over the last few months, what's happened is that marketing budgets have been slashed. That means retaining customers more important than ever. You need to start reserving your spends and focusing more on the lower hanging fruits really. And brands really can't afford to churn users now. So it's a lot more about retaining your loyal customers, improving the wallet share from them, and providing better cross-sell and upsell opportunities. So it's all about how you build loyalty during this time and goodwill that's going to lead to referrals and longer term value. Now, how you do that is, if you can, providing free access to services, especially to those who may not be able to afford it today. Educating them, free content is great, right? The amount of time people are spending consuming content online right now has never been seen before. And understanding users' context and their requirements and their demands to deliver this content and to deliver free services, deferred payments, flexibility with payments, because that's what's really going to add real value to the customer's life and buy you long-term goodwill. Now, while you're trying to bounce back, some of the to-dos that you should definitely focus on is personalization. So go beyond just, hey, Hastu, right? Say it a little more. You know a little bit more about me. You know what products I like, what channels I respond to. So start using that data, start leveraging AI and machine learning to deliver a more personalized experience to me right now. Be more authentic, stay true to your brand, be more empathetic, and understand what the consumer's requirements today are. Build a stronger connection with your customers. So your messaging really needs to be more empathetic. So again, it's about long-term value to the customer's life and not about buy something, right? And use that to center your brand to reevaluate what is the value that you add to the customer's life today, because the value that you're adding today is very different from the value that you could have been adding 6 months ago. So reevaluate who your brand is, what your brand is serving, and reinforce your brand's core values through that. Now, some of the other things that we highly recommend to all of our partners is build a strong community. We're online all the time. We're online on our computers, our phones, our tablets, more than ever. And we're engaging with brands more than ever. So use this time to build a strong community. Use this time to communicate empathetically, and please don't sell. It's all about convenience. It's all about value. It's all about how much you understand me, because I would want to buy something that I need right now, not something that you want me to buy. So that's a bit of a fundamental shift today. Some of the other things are make your user journey more convenient. Just because I have more time on my hands doesn't mean that I want to go through 6 steps to buy the same thing that I buy every week, because that's an essential. So you know a lot about me today because I'm spending a lot more time online. Use that data to improve my experience with your brand. Set up avenues for self-service. Consumers understand that a lot of industries are actually seeing a spike, like healthcare and entertainment. So they understand that you're overwhelmed. So set up self-service portals so you can serve your customers better. Use chatbots, use AI. They're great right now. And a very good example of this is Traveloka, a giant in the travel space, right? And travel, of course, really hurt by what's happening right now. But what they've done very well is they've been very supportive of their customers through this time and getting cancellations and guiding them and basically informing them through this time. What that's meant is that they've got a lot of goodwill from their loyal customers, and they've been able to very effectively convert that into reviews that will actually help them in the long term for visibility and their app store optimizations. So they've done very well to convert this short term goodwill into real long term value. Now, some of the other things, again, are leverage live platforms. I can't stress enough how much time people are spending online. So use it. People love Instagram, Facebook, or whichever social media is the most popular in the country that you operate in. Go online, interact with them, interact live with them, show them a real face. It's something that people are really engaging with right now. And also, more importantly, over communicate. And this is a responsibility that marketing has today, because you may not be able to deliver the product or the service in the same time frame as you used to, but it's very important to communicate that and set the right expectations for your users, because they will understand, but you need to set those right expectations. Revise your advertising spends and marketing spends, realign them. If you don't have supply for a particular product or you're not able to deliver a particular service or solution, stop advertising it. Focus more on what is the need of the hour from a consumer standpoint, and also what can you realistically deliver. So it needs to be a complete audit of what are you talking about, what are you pushing to your users, and is that something that's relevant today? And also that goes on to you having to reevaluate your digital assets. Um, Now users understand that you might have a million products in your catalog, but you realistically may not have the supply for them. So I don't want to go through 100 pages of out of stock. Just show me what you have, show me what I need. And that's, again, value that users appreciate today. So make sure that you're reducing the number of steps, reducing the number of interactions to a transaction, add more convenience. And a few examples that we've seen of brands doing it really, really well. One of these is Blibli.com in Indonesia, extremely well-known e-commerce company. And what they've done quite well is started running campaigns that inform users about, taking care of their health, that are addressing right now people hoarding sanitizers in soaps, in masks. So they're running campaigns that are telling people not to worry, that they have stocks and they should prevent hoarding. And they're actually also limiting purchases for that. And they've seen a significant increase in the number of users that they're reaching daily, just because they're taking up the task of informing, taking up the task of actually understanding what the community problems are today and doing their bit to communicate to those problems. Another case, Allo Doctor, health tech, one of the biggest in Indonesia again. And for them, this time has meant that there's a surge in the number of users that are actually interacting with them. And they've done very well to use real-time chatbots to make sure that they're keeping these million plus users that are coming online engaged, even when there might not be a doctor to answer their questions immediately. So they've done very well to leverage technology to keep engagements going. DoorDash, another brilliant example, and they did something very simple, and that's waiving the delivery fee. Because you need deliveries, you don't really have an option but to get a delivery, and just by waiving that delivery fee, showing an understanding of the fact that this is now an essentials, meant that they're doing very well through this time. Zomato, again, one of the quickest to adapt and done brilliantly there as well. They communicated very effectively about their contactless delivery options. They started curating restaurants who are self-certifying as following WHO advisories, sanitization stations being set up for riders before they pick up, hygiene ratings, because that is what is important today, and photos so people can see it all for themselves. And this has been a big win for them, where they've understood the customer pain points right now and addressed them head on. Right. So what's the future now? Some businesses are starting to bounce back. There's some economies that are slowly starting to open up. But if you go back in time, several years, there have been depressions. There have been crises that businesses and industries have gone through and come back from it. And the ones that have been successful are the ones that innovate, are the ones that adapt, and they are the ones that truly focus on the customer problems right now. So reflect on what are the challenges your business is solving, because the challenges you were solving 6 months ago may not be the same as the challenges the customer has 3 months from now. Keep your customers right in the middle of your entire business strategy and focus on being more empathetic, and your entire marketing and engagement and retention activities have to be empathetic. So if there's two takeaways that I would want anybody to have from this, is be empathetic in all of your communications and start trying to understand what value are you delivering to your customers in today's context. And that's it from me. But Michael's up next, talking about how to do some of the things that I just went through. So, Michael, over to you.
So I'd just like to repeat as Hassi said, my appreciation for everybody joining us today. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy. These are all very strange times, but I'm sure we can all make it through together. And we just learned so much about how to communicate and how to adjust your strategy in times like this, and seen some great examples of how various players have done that. What I'm going to talk about is how some of our biggest clients around the world use their data and use their setup to really push their messaging and their communications with their users to the best levels they've ever done it in. So, very quickly, a little bit about Adjust. Adjust is a sort of one-stop shop, for mobile marketers. The idea being that we can tell you not only where did your users come from and what they're doing, we can also assist in things like fraud prevention, audience building, A/B testing, and data availability and so on. And that last one, data availability, is really what I'm going to focus on today. And also a little bit on automation, which I'll also touch on a little bit later. So as Hastu said, there's been some interesting things happening in the last couple of months. I'm sure you're all aware. And we, as Adjust, have a pretty clear picture across the globe on what is happening. And to give a little bit of context, we are seeing these trends in particular. Although obviously travel and one or two other verticals are seeing somewhat of a downturn in KPIs in March and April, overall, there is actually a global increase in installs, an increase in the number of sessions, and also an increase in the amount of time that people are using apps. In particular, content streaming, educational, and gaming apps have, for the most part, seen these sort of increases. And what this really means is people are stuck at home and they're looking at their devices and they're really looking for new opportunities, new games, new ways to improve their daily life and the content that they consume. And what does this mean for us? Well, it means that the messaging possibilities are massive. Not only that, but as we just learned, a lot of budgets have been slashed and a lot of companies have rolled back their messaging approaches. And what this means is inventory and messaging opportunities that may have been very, very expensive at the end of last year now may become a lot more affordable, which means that if you're looking for a positive ROI on your messaging, now may be the time to really take advantage of that and sort of roll out a new strategy. So I'm going to be talking predominantly about data. The reason for this is, in preparation for this webinar, I went and had a chat with some of our biggest clients, both in Southeast Asia, but also in Japan. I am based in Tokyo, also in the US and in Europe as well. And I asked them, once you've figured out what you want to say, how do you say that? How do you actually tell people that? And this first point I'm going to make is the answer I got from almost every single person I spoke to. And that is, we base everything we say on the data that we get from our app. Because it's all very well saying the right message, but if you say it to the wrong people or if you say it at the wrong time, it can honestly be worse than not saying anything at all. So I hope nobody here today has a tracking setup that looks like this, where you link your clicks to your installs and then job done. If this is what your setup looked like, please drop me an email. I can help you so much. And that'll be a fun way to spend an afternoon at home. But we do see this quite a bit. Another setup that is maybe one step better than this, but still isn't really fully realized, is a setup like this, where you're tracking your installs and then you're tracking your sessions, and then maybe one or two key steps on your purchase journey or on your user conversion funnel. This is better for sure. But when I was talking to my clients, I asked them, when you set up your tracking, when you set up your data analytics, what is it you're trying to answer? And through speaking to 20 or 30 clients, I came up with 4 golden questions that your data setup really should answer. And it's these 4. So starting at the top and going clockwise, what do my users do in my app? Which of my users spend and why are they spending money? Which of my users should I bring back? And then of those users who've gone away, did they uninstall or not? And for the vast majority of of the clients that I spoke to and the app marketers that I spoke to, they are using an MMP like Adjust to send data in real time for the installs in those sessions, and then every single meaningful action a user can take in their app. So to give an example with a shopping app, of course registration is important, of course purchase is important, but elements like add to cart, which might seem a little bit obvious, but also remove from shopping cart, because this really tells you a lot. And it may be that the message you want to send to a user who has a product in their cart but hasn't quite purchased it, and a user who had the item in their cart but took it out because they changed their mind, might be a little bit different. If I put a pair of shoes in my shopping cart and then I remove them and you tell me about those shoes, that could be quite annoying. Whereas if they're sitting in my cart and I just forgot, that might be quite helpful. The impact that that message can have, even if the creative is identical and the wording is identical, the impact that it can have on a user can be completely different. And it is only an app which really tracks every meaningful touch point that can really answer those questions and make sure that the messages they're delivering are welcome by the users. Now, with that in mind, once you have that set up, then you can really make sure that the message that you send is exactly the right message at exactly the right time. So here is an example of 3 groups of users that I am going to message. And I am using a data tracking setup that is not really ideal, right? So I've been able to group some of these users into 3 different groups. I have people who I haven't seen for a week on the top, people who've spent at least $5 in the middle, and then people who have at least 5 sessions at the end. Now I could start messaging them. I'd probably send a different message to the top group versus the second group. But it's quite hard to differentiate, for example, between group 2 and group 3. But by setting up a system where every time any meaningful interaction happens, I get data in my BI tool or my backend, I can instead segment my users something like this. So for example, let's go through these very quickly. The top one, these are users who only use the app during weekends and uninstalled after a significant purchase. Now, what might be my strategy here? Well, pretty obviously, I'm probably only going to send them a message on the weekend. It could be that I buy ads on a network. It may be that I do push notifications. It may be that I post something on social. You know, as was mentioned before, Instagram and Facebook have really good engagement. If I'm going to target these users with those kind of targeted messages, I'm going to do it when they want to, when they are likely to see it. If they bought a significant purchase, it may be that I want to, in my creative, include content that is related to that purchase. If they bought a video game, I'm going to show them content of a different video game that is somewhat similar. If they bought shoes, I'm not going to show them a creative for video games. But if you and your app are not getting your data on per product, you can't make that distinction, and you lose the ability to laser focus your message like that. For my second group here, this is people who've purchased at least one product and currently have a similar product in their cart. Now, this is a tricky one because I probably want to wait a little bit before I message a single user with a reminder. If I put something in my cart and then 1 minute later, I get a push notification saying, hey, buddy, you left something in your cart and you didn't buy it, I might throw my device out of the window because I feel like I'm being stalked, right? It makes sense to wait, and as was mentioned earlier by Hastu, come across in your messaging like you're trying to help people, not like you're trying to give them the hard sell. So I may want to wait 24 hours or 6 hours, however it works with the product, before I remind them. If you're very keen to push them through the funnel to conversion, maybe offer them a bespoke coupon for the product they have in their cart. If you buy it within the next hour, you get 5% off or something like this. For my third group, I've used my data better and I'm saying, okay, this guy has had 5 sessions and he looked at the same product every single time, but he hasn't bought it. Again, I'm going to target him with the creative for that product. I'm also probably going to deep link him directly to add to cart and checkout. I'm not going to send him to the top of my app, and I'm not going to send him to the product page. I'm just going to help him immediately continue on that process. And that really touches on what Hastu said earlier. It is about how much you know the user, or how much the user feels you know them, right? And I'm going to touch on deep linking a little bit later, but just bear in mind that anything you can do to help your user get what they want out of your app, especially in a time like when COVID is so serious, you're really helping your users, and you're reminding them that you are providing them a service and you are helping them with their lifestyle in a time when things are a little bit tricky. Now, deep linking, I just mentioned this earlier. For those who are not aware, a deep link essentially pushes the user directly into the app rather than sending them to the store if they already have the app installed. If they do not have the app installed, once they do download and install it, you can specify a specific place in the app to send them to. So a great example of this is a shopping app that has a welcome to my shopping app video at the start. But if I clicked on a creative for a pair of shoes, you can instead have it so that when I open the app, the shoe page opens immediately. This feels really, really smooth and cool to a user. And again, if all I want to do is buy some hand wash or some face masks, and you're showing me a video of happy young teens playing with video games in your app's opening video, I just don't want to see that right now. And a deep link is a really good way to allow you to do that. And as it says on the screen in front of you, it helps conversion funnel shortening, it helps with conversion rates, but ultimately I think the third point is the most important. It just makes your users' lives easier. And I think we could all do with an easier life right about now. Another tool that is enabled and that I have seen massive amounts of testing happening right now is A/B testing. We live in a time in 2020 that we've never seen before, and every single major marketer and every single major app in the world is currently figuring out what works and what doesn't. And A/B testing is a phenomenal way to do this. Now, without a good data tracking setup, you're kind of stuck. You could maybe do users who've used your app for a long time versus new users, but that's really about it. But with mature and clever data tracking, where you're really understanding what every user is doing in your app, you can test the targeting of your messaging, the time and delivery of your messaging, and the tone and language of your messaging in super specific ways. A really good example is, for example, in gaming apps, somebody who keeps losing versus somebody who keeps winning. It may be that if you send a message to people who keep losing saying, I hope you're enjoying our game, it can come across a little bit sarcastic. Fortunately, with a proper data setup, you can A/B test this, and you can say, all right, for people who keep winning, I'm going to send them a reminder that there's a new content coming out next week. And for people who keep losing, I'm going to offer them half price on an item that will level them up, right? Another example is people who use a function like invite a friend versus people who've never invited a friend. If you have a cohort of users, let's say, who have invited 5 friends, in the creative of your messaging, you probably want to use an image of a lot of different people together. Or it may be that for somebody who's never invited a friend to your app, you might want to remind them, hey, the first time you invite a friend, you get 50% off your next purchase. There's no point in reminding somebody who has invited 5 friends that they get money off for their first invitation. This is really the power of leveraging data-driven messaging. Finally, and this could get a little bit technical and a little bit insane, so I'm gonna keep this nice and short. Automation is really something that we're seeing leveraged, particularly with gaming and also shopping verticals. What automation does is it essentially does the sort of boring part of user acquisition and retention marketing for you. You can set up rules and logics so that when a specific user does a certain thing, they are sent a message. It could be through a network that they frequently observe inventory from. It could be a push notification, whatever it may be. What this means is if you have a team of, I don't know, 10 people in your marketing team, and you've built this amazing data-driven tracking system, and you have 9 million groups of people split into different groups that you want to message, if you want to try and set up every single one of those messages, good luck. You will never see sunlight again. You will be locked in your office for the rest of time. Automation allows you to focus on what you actually should be focused on as a marketer, which is strategy and developing your messaging content, developing your app's brand. And then the automation, the robot behind the scenes, does the hard work for you. You can set the bid price, you can set the scale and the demographics and so on. You can inform the machine which users to target, and then you can get on with your day and do actual marketing and leave somebody else to hack their way through the dashboard. Now, I hope this has all come together to lead you to the point that I'm making on the screen right now. The golden goal here is to deliver the right message in the right place at the right time. The way you do this is by understanding your users with a thorough end-to-end data tracking system. From the moment they click on an ad, to the moment they install your app, to every significant action they do in your app, every single time, as Hastu said, every single time somebody uses an app, uses your app, they're giving you free data about them. In COVID, in the situation we're in now, this is more important than ever. It's extremely important to be empathetic and to be helpful to your users. And sometimes that means delivering hand sanitizer or waiving the delivery fee on a takeaway meal. Sometimes it just means providing them a fun game that takes their mind off things for half an hour. A thorough data system that is fully realized and makes sense is the right way to do this. If you are interested in how this is set up, the Adjust team are always happy to stand by and answer some questions. I think we do have a Q&A coming up, so I'm going to hand over to MoEngage now, and then we'll kick off those questions. If you do have any questions, please fire them into the Zoom Q&A section. But otherwise, thank you very much, and I appreciate your time today, and I hope everybody stays safe and sane. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Hastu, as well, for a very engaging session. It's absolutely fantastic to see almost everybody staying until the end. We do have a couple of questions, but just before that, I want to call out that we will be sharing a recording of this webinar with everybody. Also, watch out for a very special report from MoEngage, which includes all the data, the insights, the examples, and more, in fact, of what Hastu presented that will be coming straight to you very soon. We have a couple of questions, and the first one is, can you share examples of the type of data, the activity data that I should be tracking on my app, and how can I use that for engaging? Michael, you did cover some of this. Is there anything more that you want to add? And Hastu, do you want to step in on this as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So as I mentioned in my presentation, probably the biggest two is where did my user come from, i.e. which networks are working. But this is really more for ROI and acquisition strategy. But the second point would be what they are doing in my app, right? I'm going to give the example of a shopping app, right? If you look at the classic funnel from install to purchase, it would be probably something like registration, search, item page, add to cart, and purchase. If I was setting up a data strategy for this app, I would track all 5 of those. I would send the user ID and I would send the product ID back to my backend. I would also add something like remove to cart, as I mentioned, because that way I can understand where the user fell off in the funnel if they don't convert, right? I do see, and this is something I have to say is very bespoke. It's different for every app, but I do sometimes see there are blind spots in app tracking setups, right? And you'll see like, yes, user registration is covered and search is covered, but then purchase is the next one. But if there are 5 other steps before you can purchase, if you don't track those, that's a black box. You don't know what's happening there. So you don't know where your user fell off. One of the other elements, well, I remember, that comes from this sort of data tracking setup is product improvements. If you start to see a specific step in the process or in a game, like a certain level where people keep losing, reiterate on your product, take that to your product team. A product team who gets advice from their marketing team loves their marketing team. And that can really lead to some cool innovations on the product side. In terms of how to engage, it really is a case of targeting. If you're buying inventory, for example, if you have that user's device ID in your backend alongside their behavior, you can send them a very bespoke message. You can grab the product ID and send them a message that says, hey, your product X is now on sale for the next 24 hours or something like this. I hope that clears things up.
Yep. Hastu, do you want to add anything over here?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I say from my point of view, the way I would look at it right now is there's two boats, right? There are industries and brands that are doing really well, that are seeing a surge in traffic, and that are in turn seeing the ability to track more data. And the other boat are brands that are struggling. These are your mobility and travel in some of these other industries. So first thing is understand which boat you're in, right? If you're in an industry that's performing really well, like Michael said, start tracking data on carts, on wish lists, on purchasing patterns, on brand preferences, budgets, stuff like that. Because this is really data that's going to help you understand this user, who they are and who they're going to be over the next few months. And that's data you can start using to add more convenience. And I'll keep going back to convenience for this set of brands, where you need to understand, if I'm buying the same product every week, just remind me 5 days in so I can do it already and I don't turn to another brand. So I'd say everything Michael said, plus anything else you can track, please do. Now, on the other hand, there's brands that are struggling. There's industries that are struggling. And you need to understand that context as well, right? You can't be trying to send me on a trip to the Maldives this month, because that's not going to happen. What you can instead do is start sharing content around places you should visit in 2021, or December would be nice in the Alps, right? And it is through sharing this content that we'd recommend tracking data on what is the person reading more about. Are they reading more about beaches? Are they reading more about traveling in October? Because that's going to help you understand, once things start getting back to normal, what does this customer really want to do? So I'd say it's a lot about creating content and tracking that content interaction as well for brands that are struggling. And on the other hand, track as much about the day-to-day as you can for users that are in industries that aren't struggling.
Thank you, Hester. I'm guessing you're already planning your December vacation.
I'm planning one for August as well already. I'm optimistic. Yeah.
All right. Good luck with that. All right. The second question, very interesting. When should we use rich media notifications versus plain text? How do we know what works better when? Anybody wants to take this up?
I'll take a stab at it first. Honest answer is nobody really knows right now. We could answer this question for 6 months ago. But where we are today, it is going back to Michael's point on track the right data points so you can A/B test and figure it out for yourselves. And because this is where context is going to dictate what works a lot more. If you're in maybe an essential or day-to-day service, text is good enough. But if you are trying to capture users' attention, sharing content, trying to be fun, trying to be distracting the users from being stuck at home all day, then maybe you go with rich. But honest answer is today nobody knows. So A/B test it.
Yeah, just
Michael, do you want to add?
Yeah, sorry, very quickly. You kind of stole my answer at the last second there. Hastu, I was going to say, this is something that needs to be tested. A/B testing is obviously a really solid way to do that. I'm going to go out on a limb here and give my personal opinion, which is I really think it depends on what service you're offering to your user. If you are offering them something that we would consider essential, like healthcare, or even now, obviously, food delivery is very important. My gut feeling would be to lean away from a flashy creative and a video or something like that, because I think, and I'm not going to name any companies at all here, but I have seen some ads that were targeted at me that I felt were very important, essential, and they had these flashy messages or like really cool, clever jokes and so on. And I just remember feeling like, this is not the time for this. If you're offering them a game and something or content streaming or something like this, then maybe it makes a lot more sense to be kind of flashy. But I would say now, as Hasu said, the goal really is to be there for your users and to kind of help them get through all this nonsense that we're all experiencing. And I think overall, unless you're offering them a game, I would say less is more, and get to the point and maybe save the super fancy clever creatives for after everybody's happier. I hope that helps.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. One last question from Bayu Sugarda. Do we have any enterprise case studies in B2B where they adapt optimally during this COVID-19 situation? Is there any specific example that any of you want to talk about?
If I take that first, honest answer, no. There is no playbook for this. And quite frankly, it's going to be a couple of months before there can be one. At the same time, there are examples. At the same time, there are, very good examples that we've noticed from out in the world of people that are adapting very well to these times. But the one common trend that I personally have seen is creating actionable content, creating good content and relevant content during this time, especially with B2B, that has really worked. So hard sells are terrible ideas from what we see, and creating long-term value through content are the best ways. But we're also happy to connect with you offline and understand a little bit more about what industry you're operating in, and see if we can help find you some examples from that particular industry as well.
Yeah, from my side, we do put out a lot of case studies on strategies and so on. At the moment, nobody really wants to work on a case study because I think they're all quite busy. I think we may have one or two in the pipeline, but I think what will happen, and certainly what we're going to look at later in the year, is a sort of look back on what worked and what didn't with some of our clients. And that way we can maybe all create a sort of plan for next time. Of course, hopefully there is never a next time, but strange things happen, and it's important to have a sort of rollout plan for the unexpected. So at the moment, to my knowledge, I don't think anybody's put out a sort of case study yet on what they're doing, because they're doing it right now. But I would say stay tuned, pay attention to both Adjust and MoEngage's socials, because we both put out a whole bunch of content. And hopefully we never go through this again, but if we do, hopefully we all have a bit of a better plan to deal with it. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Michael, and Hastu as well. This has been a very engaging session. And as I said, it's fantastic to see almost everybody staying until the end. So that's about it for now, for today's session. We will be in touch with you soon as we plan more events and more webinars of equal use to you. We will come back to you very soon with the recording of this so that you could share this with your colleagues and your friends as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.